So starting with the agenda about the topics that we're going to cover today, Shalene took care of the introductions. Next, we're going to dive deep into intelligent automation. What's the need? How has it evolved? And what are the components involved? Then we go into the Nielsen story where Francois is going to share what the team has done and what were the outcomes that they've achieved. Then we talk about the obstacles, the approach, and the success factors for intelligent automation. And then at the very end, we can do some Q&A. So before we do that, briefly talking about InfoCepts, we were founded in 2004 and are a global leader in providing end-to-end data analytics solutions to our customers, enabling them to becoming truly data-driven organizations. What makes us unique is that even though we operate at the scale of the large global consulting firms, we still have the expertise of a niche partner. Some of the things that we do for our clients are building data platforms, advancing data-driven capabilities, supporting the systems that we create for them, augmenting business applications, and building data products. So automation, what's the need for it, right? So the first one being increasing process efficiencies. So what we've seen is that organizations have long drawn out processes with, let's say, a checklist or 10 different steps that need to be performed for everything. And there's a lot of human intervention involved. Using automation, you can take all of that away and make your processes very efficient. You can improve customer experience. So if today your internal and external clients are coming to your applications and performing 10 steps or are requesting a report and waiting for 2 days to receive those reports, you can give them a much better experience by reducing the number of clicks they click and the wait time for the reports that they request. You can optimize your back office operations. What we mean by that is that typically what happens is you've got really rigid traditional platforms where a lot of patches have been applied, and which leads to a lot of technical as well as process depth. Using automation, you can reduce a whole lot of that, optimizing the way you run your back offices. Automations do bring a lot of cost benefits, but what it also brings is reduction to the risk exposure. What we mean by that is that, okay, to err is human, and any human touch point that you reduces your risk exposure as well. You can optimize your workforce productivity. So you've got a well-paid workforce working for you where they might be performing day-to-day mundane repetitive tasks. What automation can give you is to automate those mundane tasks and really have your workforce work on the mission critical tasks, which give you a higher business outcome. And lastly, it gives you more effective monitoring and fraud detection. So in the digital world that we're living in today, monitoring your systems is becoming more and more difficult. You can automate the system monitoring, which can not only help you detecting fraud and anomalies, but also prevent them. Let's talk about evolution of technology and automation for a second now. What I believe is that automation has been around us from way before than we think it has been. As humans, we've been creating tools to answer a certain basic need. Then we've been creating machines to make it even easier to do that task. Then we progressed to create partial automation where the machine became more smart and autonomous. And now we're aspiring for full automation where the technology is much more smarter, learning from us and running autonomously. One example of that is in transportation. So humans used to use horses to go around. Then we created machines, cars, to get around wherever we wanted to. Now we have smarter cars with GPS, where you don't need to know the map, you don't need to know your way around a place, and the car would just take you. And then finally, we have driverless cars now, where they are running autonomously without really any human intervention. Similarly, in communication, we've progressed from telegraphs to wired phones to smartphones, and now smartphone assistants. And if we relate that with computers, you had the early computing hardware for very basic things like maybe a calculator. Since then, we moved to your office computer where we got an interface to manage our processes, manage your ERP systems, your business processes. With partial automation now, you are automating some of the tasks that a human worker was doing with smart workflow and RPA, and then now aspiring to use ML and AI and NLP to achieve full automation where technology continually learns from us and then can make decisions and run autonomously. So what is intelligent automation? Uh, Gartner has a definition. I won't read through all of this, but the gist of it is that it's an approach where you look at your business processes, your existing platforms like cloud platforms and digital platforms, your applications, identify candidates which can be automated, see the toolkit that you already have, which can be leveraged for it, then you check the viability of applying artificial intelligence on top of it so that the automation itself is smart, and then use the robotic technologies available at hand to perform the automation for you. Uh, the other thing that we want to talk about is that there's a perception that automation is really to cut down your workforce. We don't think that is the case. What automation really enables you to do is to do more with the same workforce. So if you have a task which requires 12 people to perform it on a day-to-day basis, automation can make you do the same task with 6 people and the computers doing a lot of heavy lifting for you. And whatever's remaining, the remaining workforce can pick up a completely different set of tasks which you weren't able to perform earlier due to bandwidth issues or whatever. Now, diving into some of the components of intelligent automation. And to understand that, first, we would talk about what are the typical tasks human workers perform. What we do is we observe using our vision, right? We observe our environment, we recognize objects and signs. Then we act by typing, clicking, filling in forms, authenticating, things of that nature. We engage using our language skills, reading, speaking, writing, and interacting with people, and also decide using our thinking and learning skills. Digital workers basically do the same thing, but using technology. For vision, they use character recognition softwares, image and video analysis. For execution, they use low-code tools or smart workflows or RPA. For language, they could use chatbots, they could do NLP, they could use speech analysis. And for thinking and learning, whatever data is available to them, they continually train themselves using machine learning and apply those learnings in the tasks that they perform. So with that, Francois, we can dive deep into the Nielsen story and go from there.
Yeah, sure.
So let's start with what does Nielsen really do? Let's start there.
So Nielsen is a market leader in consumer and media measurements. Nielsen is really made of twofold. So what we call the Connect, which is the old buy business, and the media business. The media is all about rating audience, where the buy Connect business is all about measuring the performance of the items that are sold mainly on the FMCG market. Uh, the main clients for Nielsen are really the top FMCG players, so P&G, Coca-Cola, Nestle, Unilever, and so on and so on. Really, the point of Nielsen is enriching the data, transforming the data into insight, and delivering this into to the client at the fastest way and with the highest quality.
Okay, but as we understand it, Nielsen is changing now, right?
Yeah, Nielsen is changing in terms of shape and form, and the two company now. So the two folds are split into two company, as you may have been reading in the news lately. The Global Connect is now called Nielsen IQ, which is supported by our Connect platform, and Connect will be our primary focus for this discussion around automation. The idea of this platform is really to bring the right insight to the right person at the right time. So that's really what we are intending to do, and this is where automation obviously is playing a good part of the success.
Okay, and do you want to also share the scale of the operations here with Nielsen Connect?
Yeah, so Nielsen is a large is a super large US company. We do have a footprint into more than 100 countries. We are tracking more than 52 million products on a yearly basis. You can read the other number for yourself. But what I wanted to express here as well is that we are delivering over 1.5 million to 2 million reports on the yearly basis across the world to our clients. And that notion of
Hmm.
size is really critical when we talk about automation, making sure that we are delivering. So you were talking about reducing the risk. Automation is part of the game when you want to reduce the risk, when you need to deliver to your clients. So Nielsen is using the automation in a lot of environments, data collection, you were
Hmm.
mentioning PR. We are using also automation in data transformation, data enrichment with artificial intelligence. Today, we will focus on automation for the reporting part for that 2 million outputs that needs to be delivered to the client on a yearly basis.
Okay. So while doing the prep for the session, Francois, we spoke about a lot of analogies, and the one which really stuck with me was the car analogy. Would you like to share that with the group?
Yeah, and I really like the next slide that you will all see because it's a very simple slide, but it really tells a lot when you transpose it to the report business that we are in. The focus that I want to take here is really the title of this slide is the syndicated factory for custom output. So if you're looking at these three types of car, you got the Rolls-Royce, the BMW, and the Dacia. Most of the time, companies and we as Nielsen, we were focusing on these two extreme, the Rolls-Royce and the Dacia. The Rolls-Royce being the fully customized options that you can get every single thing that you want. You can pick the color of the seats. You can pick the GPS format. You can pick whatever you want as you wish. Very, very nice, very, very great because it delivers exactly what the client think he wants and not always what he effectively needs. But it's very expensive to build and to deliver. So most of the time, the client wants to have a Rolls Royce, but they don't really have the budget for buying a Rolls Royce. On the other extreme, you have the Dacia. So the Dacia is what I call the fully syndicated environment. It's basically the report is as is. It is a set of graph and table that you cannot really manipulate. It defines, in my environment, a business question that is answered by the layout. But it's really a take it or leave it. So it does the job, but I would say to drive you from one place to the other in the case of the Dacia, but it does not provide you all the feature and the cool thing that you may want to operate with. So you really want to have something that is in the middle, which is the model of most of the car industry at the moment, at least in Europe and the US. I've took the example of BMW, where it is the right balance between what you want to customize from an output standpoint, but making sure that your factory is syndicated and automated, meaning that you can automate each and every steps that are taking care of the customization of the parameterization, meaning that if you go on the website of one of these BMW or Renault or Mercedes, you can really build your car. So you will believe and you will feel that you have your custom car, your custom output, because you can pick the color, you can pick the type of the engine, you can pick the whether you want GPS or not GPS, depending upon the price. But at the end of the day, the factory line of these car industries is fully syndicated and it's just a parameterization, is not a full development every time anymore. And that is the right balance. So you will not achieve the Rolls-Royce model, but you get a lot more than the Dacia. And what you achieve even better is something that is affordable in terms of price to your client and something that is making sense from a cost standpoint for your own company.
That's very interesting. So yeah, it gives the perception to the client that they have all the customizations available, but you're prepared for all of those customizations and your assembly lines ready for you.
Exactly.
Nice.
Exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned data, syndicated data factories, right? And would you want to go down into a little bit of detail and explain what that really means?
So in if I now translate the car industry analogy into the report, this is how it looks like. So it's a lot less sexy than the previous screen with the Rolls-Royce and the BMW, obviously. But this is taking care about the same concept. So you basically ask your question. So what do I want to do? What is the business issue that I need to resolve? Then based on that, you will select the different types of layouts that you believe are suited to answer your business questions. And based on these layouts, you will parameterize or you will configure your report in order to adapt the layout based on the default customization option that you will see in saying, I want my company to be color coded in red. I'm not going to guess which company I'm referring to. But really, it is these three steps. So ask your question is basically what type of car I want. I'm a father and I need a family car, or I'm a young man and I want to have a cool convertible. The select your template is basically what is the type of engine that I want to pick. Because I want to go fast, because I want to go cheap, because I want to go a long time, and then I want to configure the car that I want, meaning what is the size of the wheel that I want to take, what is the color of the car that I want to pick, and if the options for the color of the car are blue, red, and green, then you want yellow. There is no yellow, but you can still pick between blue, red, and green. Same concepts for the reports. The last screenshot that you see, which is generate your specification, is the most critical thing out of what I call the designer. So really, it will translate all your parameterization of the previous screens into something that is extremely structured, extremely standard, and overall can be read by a machine. So the notion that I would like you to keep in mind is, in order to be able to achieve this model, we have been really focusing on the notion of modules. So you pick modules, you parameterize module, and in the backend, you have an assembly factory that are gluing the modules with each other and parameterizing the different components that are allowed for parameterization within each modules.
Great.
And that
So
translates into a report.
perfect. So can you also share some of the pitfalls or the challenges that you had in the current processes which led you to think about automation?
So in our current process, if we are looking at our workflow from a timing standpoint, and it is even more important in a time of COVID, in a time of when lots of things is happening, where basically the information has a value, but for a limited number of days or even a limited number of hours. So in order to take your decision, you need to get the information at the right time, which is even more important today than any time before. So looking at our way of working in the past before automation, I would say we were looking at reviewing request specification and doing the design of the specification upfront with the client from a blank page or for an existing report. So not a very structured manner. Then when you write a specification manually, you need to have a developer reading your specification and try to understand what you mean by.
Right.
And that is an open door for basically misunderstanding, miscommunication, error that you see only at the end. Then obviously the developer needs to do the development. So in the case of our Connect platform, it is a set of steps that you need to take, and you need to click here, to click there. You need to bring a graph to transform it into a line chart, a bar chart, an heat map, or whatever else to implement the colors, and then you need to review basically with the designer that the output that is provided is what is the according to the expectation of the designer, and you have a long lead time for that. So not only you're affected by the fact that the developer is a scarce resource and you have a limited and banded capacity, uh, but also due to the fact that it takes some time to do all these steps manually and the time for the communication. So reducing by automation the potential misunderstanding is a critical thing, even more than the automation by itself, I would say, because it avoids back and forth and it avoids a lot of frustration. Is what you have parameterized is exactly what you get. It is not any open door to interpretation from the developer because it has not been expressed properly by the designer. And when you live like me in a really multicultural, multi-country environment, there is a lot of room for misinterpretation and misunderstanding due to the differences of culture that only the robot is not affected by that.
Right. So things could get literally lost in translation versus the robot really doesn't care about it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what were some of the steps that you took, and if there were any prerequisites that had to happen for you to go ahead and do some automations on your side?
So the mandatory step and the really the prerequisite for a robot to be operating properly is to get a set of specification that the robot can read, understand, and implement or apply. And that very first part of what we call Crown and the report order specs in the JSON format is absolutely mandatory. It's like a questionnaire with only closed questions for which the robot will know exactly what to do for the parameterization of each of these questions, I would say. And there is no room for an open question. An open question cannot be interpreted by a robot because the robot will not have the code defined behind it in order to implement what has been manually entered by an end user. So the idea was really, as a mandatory step, to can all the features that were leveraged, that can be leveraged by the robot. That's the most common feature in order to be efficient into the designer, translate that into a JSON in order to start the automation process. And again, I insist, automation can only work from a structured specification documentation. So it's converted into Excel. We are using UiPath as an RPA software that is reading the Excel, and the report is generated automatically out of our platform. And there are multiple functions embedded in our platform that the robot can use as well in order to share the output with the relevant users.
That's pretty impressive. So what we've done, Francois, is we've created a short 30-second demo to show what the platform does. Would you mind doing a voiceover and explaining the group what it does?
Of course, yes.
Sure. All right. So
really, it's building the report into the designer platform. You move from steps to steps. You define and you export the JSON file as the set of specification, and then you enter the Connect platform, which will allow you to select the product dimension, go to the front end, manipulate the dimension and add the visualization, add the thresholding and the specific customization for this and that. And at the end of the day, we'll save the report and finally we'll share the report with the designer for review. And this is the view of the final report. To give you an idea, because we will talk about that in the next on the next topic, it takes less than an hour for the RPA to build this end to end, and it takes less than an hour for the designer to build the specification. So all in all, it's a very efficient process. In the previous world, it was taking more than days.
Some of your key takeaways as you went on this journey, right? And we would really like to talk about 3 buckets here, from the workflow perspective, from technology perspective, and from the scope perspective.
Yeah, so let's start with some discussion about workflow. So basically, I would say you can only reach automation of a manual activity by understanding the workflow of your manual activity and breaking it down into steps. So starting an automation project without a good understanding of your process step by step and trying to reimagine or redesign the step by step activity of a human is difficult because you enter a very unknown world. It's more of reimagining than automating. So understanding your workflow, your step by step is a very important part. And if you don't do it, you will basically set yourself for failure. So in our case, the sequence of the events were really critical as we do have dependencies, obviously, between the steps. And our modular approach helped to facilitate the workflow, but we also had at the same time to reorder some steps in order to make the RPA layer more efficient. So you need to do this before doing this, before doing that, whereas the human was doing this before doing this, but redoing that before redoing this. So there is a little bit of re-engineering and efficiency approach in the human step-by-step approach when you are implementing your RPA. It is important, and just also keep in mind that the robot is only an automation of what the human is doing. So you need to start understanding what the human is doing.
Understood. Right. How about technology?
So technology is always an interesting topic, and I used to say you really need to select the technology that you want to use wisely. And I really mean it on purpose because I've made mistakes more than one time in my career on selection of technology. So in the case of the RPA is automation can be reached in multiple ways. RPA is a kind of a buzzword that you were mentioning, the cool kids. That's true, but it's not always the most adapted solution versus what I call a programmatic approach. So the RPA is a robot that is clicking on the screen. Programmatic approach is something that is done in the back end. So RPA has value, programmatic has value, but you need to select basically your automation approach based on the feature of your underlying platform. So in the case of Connect for Nielsen, we did select the RPA approach because the platform we are using is a canned platform. So you cannot access the code from a backend standpoint, it's proprietary. So we had to actually mimic the end user. Now, when you use an RPA approach, you need to pay attention as well of what is the tool that you are using from an RPA, and there are multiple. Don't make the mistake to not be aligned with your company standard, especially if you're working with large company. You may have a fantastic project, a fantastic tool, a fantastic code, and technology is saying, we're not supporting that platform. Even within the same tool, and we are using UiPath in our case, you need to care about the version over which you developed versus the version that is supported. And in our case, we have to actually migrate part of our code to accommodate the right versioning of the provider versus the versioning of Nielsen. So there is a lot of things to keep in mind. And if I want to give you a very last piece of example, if you go to Excel, Excel has a sum button somewhere. If you use an RPA approach, the RPA, the robot will click on the sum button. If the next version of Excel is having the sum button at a different place, you will have to retrain. You will have to let your RPA know. The sum function of Excel does not change between one version and another, and you can access the sum function to the Excel from a backend standpoint. This is what I call the programmatic approach versus the robotic approach.
Robotic approach, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about scope?
So when talking about scope, I really want to focus on being agile and making sure that you can scale your environment. So in our case, we have the notion of the engine and we have the notion of the modules. The modules is the content of the designer, and each module has a replica in the assembly factory as a set of steps in code for the robot. What we had to make sure is we need to build the core components of our platform, which I call the engine, in such a way that it was easy and cheap to add content. Because the scope is large, because we are answering a lot of business questions, because there is a lot of reports to deliver to the client, and there is a lot of features that you want to implement upfront, but then you want to keep capitalizing and upgrading your environment. So you really need to have an environment that is that can accommodate the upgrades and the changes. So we made a good effort on that because of the scope, and we looked at it from an iterative approach as well. So not trying to build everything at the beginning. So really being agile and saying, okay, we need specific set of functions for the engine. Then we can build a couple of modules. Then we can test. Then we can enrich the engine with features that can be brought to new modules. And then we keep going this way. It's not build the engine and then build the modules. But also when build the modules, you need to make sure that the cost for building a module is not out of range. Otherwise, you basically kill the cost efficiency. And especially in our times, self-financing on your own budget is something that is very, very common. So you need to be very careful.
Okay. And lastly, Francois, if you could share with us what's coming, right? What's coming on Connect now?
So what's coming on Connect and specifically for Cron and the RPA environment? So we are in the process of increasing the number of features and increasing the number of modules because we want to be able to reach 99% of our user business questions and requests and types of customization. Then what you really want to think about is to have an environment that can deliver across multiple platforms. So it's obvious we are delivering with our NIS ad hoc platform. We can deliver with Excel environment and Excel reports. What I'm looking at and I'm really targeting now is being able to deliver an automated report, but supported as an Alexa content on a dedicated Alexa skill that can be built by the machine as well, that can be built by the robot. Designer is the same. The way to convey the insight is different, but at the end of the day, the insight is the same as well. And then what we probably want to do, but that is more of the journey, I would say that we are taking, and it will take more time for sure, is really to say if we are a good designer and a user ready designer and a UX on top of the designer, why not actually bringing the designer to the client and to the end user directly? Because it's easy to use and actually does remove all the complexity of building a report by yourself, whether it is with the ad hoc platform, whether it is by building some Excel output with VBA scripting or these type of things. And I like the last bucket on your slides, which is automation is a journey and is not a destination. And to be honest, with a little bit of imagination, there is no destination. You just keep going and keep going and keep going, and you always find some other ways, more efficiencies, better way to deliver, new things to deliver. And when you have everything automated, as you were mentioning, you can spend more time on building new things, meaning building added value to your clients, meaning also building added value for your own company.
Some recommendations around how to kickstart your automation journey if you're not already there. You should identify any repetitive manual tasks that you have and then automate those to realize your business outcomes. You garner organizational buy-in and alignment. You select a baseline automation approach, carve out a pilot business process, right? It could be by region, it could be by business unit, it could be by department, whatever it may be, right? Automate that, validate your assumptions, and then continually monitor and iterate and move along in your journey. With that, we thank you for attending the session. And if you have questions, you can shoot an email over to me or visit our website.